Hello and welcome to this White Fox Talking podcast short. Outside of me is Seb.
Hello.
Hello, Seb. Thank you for all you do with this world of technology.
Well, thank you for being here and giving us information.
Dragging poor unsuspecting guests in. Like today, we have our resident, I don't think he knows he's a resident psychologist, well, he is now, resident psychologist, Dave Gallagher online. How are you, Dave?
Hello. Yes, I'm champion today, thank you.
Champion. Looking very nice in that sage top. Very calming today.
Yeah.
Is it sage? It is sage.
Yeah, I'd say
Oh, right.
sage.
I would have said
I like
green.
sage. Green. I like sage. It's like one of my favourite colours. It's very calming.
It is.
Yeah. I also like the smell of sage as well.
And the taste.
And it's good in stuffing.
Such a northern thing to say. Anyway, thanks for that, Dave. So, the reason for the short is basically, Dave, you carried out a small study when we had a group doing the Sheffield Half Marathon, the Mind in Motion study. Would you like to lead on? And we, hopefully, will have some positive results. If things are all negative results, we're not putting it out.
No. There's quite a lot of positive stuff in there.
Excellent.
Yes, so I duly was invited to participate in terms of collecting some data, which was a great opportunity actually to trial a few different measures. So very interested in the kind of well-being component, but trying to unpack some of the kind of psychological factors underlying that and some of the lifestyle factors that went into that program of training. So it was I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 12 weeks of data collection. I know the training probably started before the Christmas, but we jumped in with the data collection just after the Christmas New Year break, which seemed a logical place to start. And yes, we did 12 weeks of data collection. I believe there were around 11 people signed up. We didn't quite get the full 11 data sets complete. And, as happens with these things, people don't always manage to fill out every bit of data, but we got quite a lot of stuff. So I can launch into a few of the measures. So what we were interested here, of course, is to look at things like mood over time, the kind of mindset that people were adopting. As with any big challenge like a half marathon or anything else, you kind of want to get yourself in that mindset, and we want to chart the progression of how well you stay in that mindset. Things like everyday and every week well-being. So there are various ways to tap into well-being measures, which we can chart the progress over time. One thing we certainly wanted to understand was something called the mental health pillars, something called the 5 mental health pillars, which includes sleep, nutrition, training, support, and that's support of by others, the community, the family support that is pretty important when you're doing any endurance type challenge, and self-care, of course. So we took stock of these on a weekly basis. Some of the measures we took weekly, some of the measures we took at the start, in the middle, and at the end. And yes, I mean, I can cut to the chase and just give you an overview of what we found. So, for instance, mood. Mood did naturally fluctuate over time, especially when you're getting into training and your sleep changes and your commitment kind of goes up and down as you become fatigued as well. But as a general rule of thumb, people did feel better emotionally as they went through the training program, and certainly after, of course, when they completed the training and the race. And this was manifest in terms of one of the dimensions is control. So various dimensions I can delve into in a little bit more detail, but control is pretty important. Agency, being empowered in terms of your destiny and in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So control certainly improved along with mood. We looked at things like goals. So goals are very important when we are embracing a challenge. We want to be setting a goal to achieve that challenge and plan the milestones along the way. And we found that actually people's clarity of goals became stronger. This was probably the biggest change we saw overall, and it did show a significant improvement. So there's some rudimentary stats. We only had a small cohort in this, so it's difficult to put really rigorous statistics behind it. But occasionally the effects are strong enough that they manifest more or less as a statistical significance. Training mindset grew, so people were rating how they felt their training was going over time, and those ratings increased. So people felt, as a rule, their training did improve over time. And again, that's what you'd naturally hope that would happen as you get into that commitment, as you get over that the initial jubilation of starting, and then perhaps a bit of a slump as you realise it's hard work. But then you settle into that routine and actually get into that process. In terms of well-being, so I should just, before I unpack everything, I'll just give a little spiel about some of the tests that we actually did. So we did use something called the well-being, well, it's the Warwick and Edinburgh well-being scale, which is a very much used and validated scale looking at various questions and dimensions on well-being. I'll just pull up the sort of questions. So things like how optimistic do you feel? How useful do you feel? How relaxed do you feel? How are you dealing with problems on a day-to-day basis? Are you thinking clearly? Are you feeling closer to others? What else is there? Feeling cheerful. So on a daily basis, how cheery do you feel? Do you feel good about yourself? Are you interested in other people? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling loved? How do you decide to use the time? So there's a whole raft of different questions in there. And as a rule, looking across time points, pretty much nearly all of those dimensions improved from the start to the middle to the end. Um, that's pretty comprehensive actually, generally speaking. And of course, as you train, as you get fitter, as you get those natural endorphins coming through, you get the physiological changes. That's going to get you in a better state of mind. Ultimately, your brain health is improving along the way. So we used the Warwick and Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale, and that was administered 3 times through the process. We also used something I've actually been developing myself over the years, something we called the weather survey. So think it's actually based on nautical heritage. So the concept of the barometer. So as a sailor, I've done quite a bit of sailing in the past, sea voyaging. You use a barometer to judge the pressure, the atmospheric pressure, which by virtue of that refers to effectively the weather conditions. What are we predicting the weather's going to be, or the sea state, or that pressure? So as the weather changes, as our reading of what the weather's going to be doing, if there's a storm coming, we need to be a bit adaptable. We need to batten down the hatches. Or if it's good weather, we kind of navigate into that. So the psychological barometer is the term I concocted for what we call the weather survey, which has been used here. And it's effectively to kind of judge your mood and your emotional state as you go through the days. And it gives a sense over time of, which elements are kind of getting into the more stormy, rainy sort of weather, which elements are more positive, is the sun shining through. So there's a bunch of questions on there. Let me just pull up on my screen just to remind. So we've got things which refer more or less to our kind of lifestyle aspirations, things like motivation, things like how clear are your goals, how good a sense of clarity of goals do you have. Confidence is in there as well. So as we become more confident, we're heading into much more optimistic territory. There's also an element on the thinking, the emotional and the well-being side, but the type of thinking, are you engaging in positive thinking on a daily basis? Or is there an encroachment of negative thoughts? How is your energy? How in control do you feel? And also elements of cognitive focus. So are you able to concentrate? Do you have a lot of distracting thoughts? So this survey I actually validated in the course of a tall ships expedition a few years ago with young people from adverse backgrounds, and I've since used it in the context of a homeless charity and done some experiments around that. So we used that weather survey to see again how these different dimensions are impacting, or rather the training's impacting on that. And the one that really stood out, which I alluded to at the start, is clarity of goals. So quite a big upshift, maybe about 20%, 30% upshift in the scores from the start through the middle to the end. So these different measures unpack different psychological and emotional elements of how that training's affecting your mindset and your well-being. The other measure that we used was the
Can I just get back
self-assessment.
to the weather
Yeah,
survey?
yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
sorry, Dave. I do find it very interesting that you've got improvement in all of them. But what I
Mhm.
do find interesting in a weird kind of way, but it kind of makes sense. I'm not sure if you analyze this. The negative thinking actually has gone up too. Do you
It
think people
has.
may have, although it's comparably
Hmm.
very, very low to any of the other scores,
Yeah.
but do you think people just say, I'm not doing that again?
I mean, there could be an element of that. I mean, it's easy to think, oh, well, if you're positive thinking, you're not negative thinking, but actually the two very much can sit together.
Mm.
That's self-doubt.
Mm.
So, you might find a little bit of self-doubt creeping in. I should caveat this, and I do need to really inspect the data again. The negative thinking in the past has been a bit of a bug in the system because it's actually scored the other way around. And I'm not sure if now you've pointed that out, I've forgotten to look back at it actually, but the negative thinking could be going down. So I'd be cautious about that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's all I'll say on that
Well,
subject. I
I'm
mean,
I'm
it's
here to
possible.
point out your errors.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that
as
was, yeah.
someone who ran it, yeah, I had quite a few negative thoughts afterwards. In fact, I
Well,
had
that's
negative
it.
thoughts for a few
Yeah,
weeks because I couldn't bloody move. So,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we could really delve deeper into this. We could delve in with individual people and see how their own circumstance and their own experiences could help interpret those
Hmm.
those data as well. But I mean, I very much feel self-doubt is a key component of thriving. It's how you deal with self-doubt. It's not just about banishing it completely, but it's how you reframe negative thoughts and acknowledge negative thoughts are a natural part of
Hmm.
everyday life. The ways you can adopt a positive psychology mindset and everything's optimistic and positive. Sometimes you've got to deal with the negative thoughts and acknowledge them and process them and understand what they are telling you. I'll come back a bit later to the I can't. I can't is a really kind of important facet of overcoming your fear and how yeah, I don't want to say too much right now, but maybe or in the next episode, whenever we
yeah.
pick up this conversation, the can't bit I think can be a powerful force for motivation and overcoming doubt rather than just banishing it. But yeah, I don't want to say too much about that right now. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Sid. Yeah, just briefly, the other measure we looked at was the self-assessment mannequin, and this is something I use a lot in my tests. It's been used a lot in academic studies of stress and mood as well. And this looks at three different dimensions, what we call the pleasure or the valence dimension. So the simple scale is from 1 to 9, and you get these little cartoon figures which kind of show a very sort of sad face through to a smiley face beaming. So it's how pleasurable are you feeling in response to the situation you're in? Are you feeling positive rather than negative? The arousal dimension, sometimes called the energy dimension, is kind of how much active energy do you feel you have? Are you feeling lethargic or inactive, or are you feeling very active at the other end of the scale? And dominance is the third element which comes into this, which is the sense of control you have from no control through to full control. And it's very interesting. I always find the dominance or the control element is possibly the most interesting element in the self-assessment mannequin. And we definitely have an upshift from, I think, around about 5.7. It's a 1 to 9 scale, up to just below 7, which is a decent amount of shift. That may have been significant. I'd need to check back at the data, but a small sample, but still being more in control is a facet of having better mental fitness, being more in tune with how you feel, a sense of empowerment and agency and satisfaction of where you are. So I think that's interesting in itself. And then just a brief word on the 5 mental health pillars. There was a little bit of a downturn in sleep. So sleep went from about 6.5. Again, this is from 0 to 10 scale, down to around about 6. I mean, it's not a big shift. If you inflate the graph, it looks like it's gone down. Um, Sleep's always going to be an interesting one on an endurance type of training schedule. I mean, naturally, sleep varies with people according to the demands of their life from week to week or day to day. And you might get a bit of a fatigue element with your training. You might be overtraining, or you might be just encroaching on the quality of sleep because your body and your mind are quite stretched through the process of the training schedule anyway. But it just highlights that things like sleep are very important, as with nutrition, to get right. It's easy to like push them aside and neglect them, but they will have a major impact on your brain health as well as your physical health and your mindset as well. So I mean, yeah, I could go into more detail on various elements of all these findings, but that's the main sort of thing. There's definitely a positive outcome from the measures on various dimensions. Well-being does appear to be better, as you might hope it would be. And things like the mental clarity and the sense of control really stood out, and the sense of goals, which is nice to have these, ladder these different measures in there so that it really unpacks some of the psychological factors in more detail than just saying, well, you felt better, your mood was improved, and so on. It's nice to drill down and see, well, where did that particularly have an effect? And yeah, it's so important to have a good sense of where you're going in life and your focus towards that. So yeah, that's kind of a nutshell whistle stop tour of the data we got.
Well, I'm glad that overall it was a positive effect, because it'd have been pretty disappointing if not. Yeah. I mean, as someone who was doing it, I know that like about a third of the way into it, I really struggled. And I think it's that, that enthusiasm to start training and then realising shit, this is hard. And I'm behind where I want to be. I don't know about, the sleep one. I think it's possibly because we had people that have got everyday lives, and next thing they're training for a marathon, aren't they? Or training for a half marathon, and a tough half marathon. Training for a tough half marathon, and the realisation is you need to get that training in. So possibly, but yeah, I think I'm happy with that.
Would you say it's a while since you've done anything of that magnitude? So that was quite a big deal.
Yeah, the last so the time I ran before that was, what was it, May, 18 months before that, when I did the Leeds marathon, and then and it took some getting over, did that. So yeah, and I'll be honest, I've not run since that. So I know I've gone and entered another marathon. What a fool! But yeah, I mean, for the well-being. Yeah, it's been great, and thank you for doing the study, mate. It's really good.
I'm interested because did you start off the training, or partway through your training, you were actually in Australia, so you were on your holidays? How did that impact on that?
I think I'd started the training in November, and it wasn't going well. I was basically doing strength and conditioning training, really, and then started the running in Australia, but I was on holiday. Actually went walking, did some mountain walking, absolutely fine. But then when I started running, just running that little bit faster, I really, I struggled to get past like 3K at start. And then I did a couple of park runs, and then it was just building it from there. And then when I got back, I was just, my old body's failing me, mate, so I got on treadmill a lot and just, But yeah, it was cool, it's good. I like it, mate. I'm glad that, especially the sort of, the well-being, basically, So thank you for so much.
That. There's many more things could be done in a study like that, but it was a good opportunity to try a few different aspects. I mean, like I say, I've tried some of these. I've tried all of these measures in different scenarios before. Never in the context of a training program, or in the case of an adventure program, which I guess is a similar thing with the homeless charity I work with, or on a tall ships expedition. But sometimes I use these measures, such as the weather survey. I chart my own progress from one week to the next. Sometimes you're having a slump in your life and in various aspects, and you can start to unpack and unpick, the areas where you're struggling. It might be a bit sort of brain fog. Your cognitive focus is not on point, or your motivation might be slumping. I like to use these a bit like you might use a wearable, like a heart rate tracker or fitness tracker. You can sort of track your mental fitness over time, and then address, what's kind of where the gaps are and so on.
Well, thank you for your work.
Pleasure.
Running the study or survey, and for producing this report, which is very nice, very colourful.
Absolutely, we'll share it.
And again, we will share it. Thank you to everybody that took part. So it was worthwhile, and it was tough. If anyone wants to do a tough half marathon, I'd suggest the Sheffield one. It's there's 8 kilometres of uphill. Although, I suppose one downside was the guy that was actually running back when I reached mile 11, and he was running back with his medal on and everything, which was quite disappointing. I just didn't have the strength to cross the road to trip him up. But yeah. So, cool. Thanks a lot, Dave. We'll get that out. We'll get this little short out. And hopefully people can sort of, the takeaway from it is obviously that focus and, I suppose, having a goal gets you on track, even though I suppose I could have prepared a bit earlier, but yeah. Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.